Hey, for those of you who are going to be watching this a little later, I'm going to hold off a little bit and let people log on. And then that way, if you want, you can go ahead and speed up just a little bit later and see what's going on. Hey, Shalom, Mark, Micaiah. What's going on? What's going on, Juan and Craig? Mr. Woods, how y'all doing? For those of you who are going to stay on, we're going to get started here right at about 7 o'clock. How you been doing, Mr. Woods? And still trying to recover from throat surgery. Really, didn't know that you had throat surgery. I hope everything went well. Hey, Shalom, how you doing? Yalamed, how you doing, Cyruth? Oh, that's my beautiful wife logged on. How beautiful. Hey, Cassie, how you doing? We'll probably get started here in about another minute. And we're going to be going through we're going to read a chapter in a book called Walking in the Light, and it's talking about the Sabbath. So it's going to be some good information. The chapter we're going to read is about the Lord's Day, and how that originated and how that came to be. I had a severe compressed disc in my neck that was pressing on my spine. Oh, wow. And so it affected your throat. Yeah, you know, Dad, he's had, I think, 3, 4 neck surgeries and about 4 back surgeries. So I know how those surgeries go just by watching him. I've been trying to avoid them. Whenever I feel it coming on in my neck, there's some exercise that I went to, and the doctor showed me how to do some exercises and was explaining to me that the muscles is what controls our spine. So when I found out about that, I went to this place down in Nashville, Tennessee. Went down there and they hooked me up to some machines, some electrodes. They watched me walk, and oh yeah, oh wow, okay, that was pretty deep surgery then. Wow. Well, thanks for telling me. I'll be praying for you, and praying that everything goes well. But yeah, he hasn't had another surgery for probably about 4 years or so, something like that. So yeah, but he normally he's had quite a bit. Hey, Sister Vicky, how are you doing? And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm not going to try to take up everybody's time. And yeah, me too. I was having some issues with my neck and with my back, but when I feel it come on, they gave me some exercise to do, and usually when I do that, it straightens right up. So hallelujah for that. Tell him he's in my prayers. I sure will. I will let him know. I'll probably see him in the morning, and I'll talk to him then. So what we're getting ready to read here is going to be in a book that I'm going to read. And the chapter is nothing but, I mean, they're short pages, so it's not some big, long, lengthy book, but I'm going to read the chapter of it. And I wanted to do that because I know that there are still a lot of people who are wondering, hey, Sister Vicky, who are wondering about where Sundays originated from. And I know that we are under the misconception that Sundays originated because the early believers got together and met for service the day after the resurrection, which they would call Sunday, which we would know it by the first day. And but that's not actually how it originated. I know that's the scripture that's being used, but that's not actually what's actually been done. So I'm going to, instead of me talking and trying to give information, as I've said earlier, sometimes it's hard for our people to hear the truth about things. And sad to say, it does come from, we've been trained to not hear our own people talk. So basically, if it doesn't come from the Caucasians, our people have a hard time listening to it. So I'm going to read a book that is from them, and they are breaking down actually where it came from, where Sunday or the Lord's Day actually came from. So I know a lot of people may think that I've been harping on this for about the last week or so, and I'm harping on it. Why? Because we've had it ingrained in our minds for years upon years upon years. So we cannot just get away from it, and we cannot learn about it just because we heard it one time. So we're going to need to hear some in-depth study of why we would meet together on what is known as Sunday, or Solus Dias, or Dias Solus, Day of the Sun. And so we're going to try to hear some information where you can go back and research for yourself. Never take what anybody says. You go back and you research the information for yourself. And so this is going to give us information as to why we actually should be meeting on the Sabbath and not Sunday as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. If any of you all get this book, this is going to be chapter 11, and it's going to be called Sunday, the Lord's Day. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start reading, so we're not going to take up any more time. Chapter 11, Sunday, the Lord's Day. With all of the evidence provided thus far, the question must be asked, why doesn't Christianity properly observe the Sabbath? The answer is actually quite simple and well documented. After centuries of organized religion had a chance to settle in, men eventually attempted to change this command, which, of course, is not possible. Whether men choose to observe the Sabbath or not is of no consequence. The Sabbath is still the Sabbath. Make no mistake about the fact that the Catholic Church and Christian practice of worshiping on Sunday, the day customarily attributed to sun god worship, is simply a tradition created by men. It was man that attempted to replace the Sabbath with Sunday, and not Yahusha or Yeshua or Saul, or we know him as Paul in English. Traditionally, the adoption of Sunday observance in place of the seventh-day Sabbath has been attributed to ecclesiastical authority rather than to biblical precepts or mandates. Thomas Aquinas, for example, states categorically, in the new law, the observance of the Lord's Day took the place of the observance of the Sabbath. not by virtue of the precept, which is the fourth commandment, but by the institution of the church. The same view was reiterated 3 centuries later in the Catechism of the Council of Trent, and I actually posted that up on Facebook, which states, "It pleased the Church of God that the religious celebration of the Sabbath day should be transferred to the Lord's Day. During the theological controversies of the 6th century, Catholic theologians often appealed to the ecclesiastical origin of Sunday in order to prove the power of the church to introduce new laws and ceremonies. The echo of such a controversy can be detected even in the historical Lutheran Augsburg Confessions," and I posted that up online as well, which states, "They," open parentheses, "the Catholics," close parentheses, "refer to the Sabbath day as having been changed into the Lord's Day, contrary to the Decalogue or the 10 Commandments, as it seems. Neither is there any example whereof they make more than concerning the change of the Sabbath day. Great, say they, is the power of the church, since it has dispensed with one of the 10 Commandments. I hope that the reader can see this for exactly what it is: error. No man system or institution has the authority to change the commandments of Yah." Okay, let me reiterate that. No man, no authority, or no religious system can change the commandments of the Most High. So since we have Sunday worship and we are not told anywhere in the scripture to forsake the Sabbath, to listen and to meet together on Sunday, or we know it biblically as the first day over the fourth day, then why are we meeting on the first day versus the 7th day when the Most High commanded us to meet on that day? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue reading. "The winds of change were blowing from as early as the 1st and 2nd century. In the year 115 AD, Ignatius, the bishop of Antioch, wrote in the letter to the Magnasaints, 'If then those who had walked in ancient practices attained unto newness of hope, no longer observing the Sabbath, but fashioning their lives after the Lord's day, on which our life also arose through him and through his death, which some men deny, while there are various translations of this document, they all seem to infer that there was a new emphasis developing toward Sunday and a diminishment of Sabbath observance. This letter came only decades after the death of the original disciples, which dramatically illustrated how quickly error can be perpetrated within organized religious systems. It is also interesting to note that Ignatius was from Antioch, a place where the disciples were first called Christians. Listen to this, which is in Acts 11 and 26. And a culture deeply steeped in paganism and apparently susceptible to false doctrines. In fact, the Temple of Fortuna, y'all look that up. The Temple of Fortuna in Antioch was actually rededicated by Christians for their own use. Now, let me say this. When I say Christians, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. We are believers in the scripture, but this is speaking about Christians, but they did that for their own use. By the time that Ignatius wrote his letter, there were numerous problems within the assembly of believers, including schisms, false doctrines, and other heresies. The early faith was pummeled on all sides by critics and deceivers. Shaul, or Paul, spent much of his ministry attempting to correct the problems which festered in the early assemblies, but as soon as the original disciples passed away, the wolves rushed in like a tidal wave, just as he had predicted. And this was predicted in Matthew chapter 7, verse 15, Acts chapter 20, verse 29, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, and also 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1. The problem worsened over the centuries because many of the well-known church fathers came out of Gnosticism and brought some of their heretical beliefs with them. Epiphanes had been a Nicolaitanian, and we know that the Nicolaitans, Yah said, or Yahusha says, of which he hates in the book of Revelations. So there was something about the Nicolaitans that the Most High hated and that the Messiah hated. And when you go and break that word, Nike and Lasion, Nike means to Lord or master, and Lasion means over the people. So you see what has happened in churchianity today. You have the men who sit up front, up high. Let's think about the Catholic Church. They sit up high, and you have the people sitting down low. So they're looking over the people, and it's not necessarily an oppression, but that's what they did. They almost made it like two categories of people, and that's how they gained control over the people. And that's the breakdown of the word Nicolaitanism. You can go and look that up for yourself. Anyway, Epiphanes had been a Nicolaitan. Ambrose of Milan had been a Valentinian. Look the word Valentinian up, and you'll see also it was almost like a sex cult, believe it or not. And Augustine had been a Manichaean for 9 years before joining the Catholic Church. We know very little about the character of these men, only the words which history has recorded concerning them. Sadly, it appears that some of their theology was flawed. All of these Gnostic sects were distinguished by their rejection of the Old Testament law. Some of them even rejecting the mighty one of the Old Testament, Yahuwah. And some of them even equating the mighty one of the Old Testament, Yahuwah, with the evil one, Ha-Satan, or the Satan. In their rejection of the Old Testament law, which is the Torah, the Valentinian Gnostics even rejected all moral laws, leading to scandalous living. This Valentinianism acted as a halfway house for 200 years between heathenism and Christianity. The Marcionites were later on refuted, but they also contributed towards the aversion to and even rejection of the Old Testament Tanakh. And you know the Tanakh, in case many of you all don't know what the Tanakh is, the Tanakh is the first 5 books. It's also the art or the writings such as Psalms and such as Proverbs, and then all of what they call the minor prophets. So that the whole Old Testament is actually called the Tanakh. Okay, so sun-worshipping Mithraism, who advanced Babylonian Chaldean astrology with the sun at the center of it, played a major role in the resultant merger between sun worship and the messianic belief. So here we have the combination of the two. Manes and his followers, the Messianites, from among them Augustine came, looked on Judaism with horror, rejected the Old Testament. Now, let me say this. I know it says Judaism, but the early believers were not into Judaism. Judaism came a little bit later, the mixing with Babylonianism and also with mysticism, and they blended it with the Torah. So Yah first gave the Torah to people, okay? Judaism actually came a while later. So the early belief of the forefathers was not Judaism, and I hate that they do that, and I hate that they say that, because Judaism is not the true belief of the scripture. It is a mix of mysticism and the older covenant, which Yah does not agree with, nor does Yah allow. Okay? So, Manichaeans from amongst Augustine came and looked on Judaism with terror, rejecting the Old Testament Tanakh entirely. And Manichaeism was not improbably born in an outbreak of anti-Semitic fury. So let's look at that word anti-Semitism, okay? That's actually not the correct word, okay? It should be called anti-Shemitism, okay? So you have the brothers, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, okay? The children of Israel, they were descendants of Shem. So today, when we hear the Jewish people cry anti-Semitism, no, it's actually anti-Shemitism, okay? And that's from the people who are descendants of Shem. Now, I'm going to say this. The Jewish people today are descendants of Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz was a descendant of the third brother, which is Japheth, okay? So if you are a descendant of Japheth, or Japheth, as it is said, then there is no way that you can be a Shemite, okay? You have to be a Japhethite or a Japhite, okay? But you are not a Shemite, or as they call today, a Semite, okay? So the people who are over in the land of Israel today, they're called Israelis, and they are called, they should be called after Japheth, okay? Because Ashkenaz was born from Japheth. Okay, so let's keep listening. Okay, the Manichaeans, who were half Christians, kept Sunday in honor of the sun, right? They kept Sunday in honor of the sun. Do not forget that Sundays are involved in sun worship. Remember, the steeples that are on top of the building are objects of sun worship. So we have to be very, very careful. That's how Baal was worshipped. They built phallic symbols. You see it in front of Constantinople. You see it in front of the major Catholic church in Rome, the big steeple that stands up. That's actually a pillar, or it's actually called a phallic symbol, which is a form of sun worship. And today, on top of the churches, even here in Madisonville, when you look on top of the church, a lot of the churches, you will see the big long steeple. Now, a lot of people will think that that's for artistic design, but that is not for artistic design. That is actually for sun worship, or Baal worship. And that's why they met on the day of the sun. So be sure and watch that and be careful for that. And if you attend a church that actually has a steeple on top, ask your pastor what that steeple means. Just ask him what it means, and then go back and do your research and go and just Google the origins of a church steeple and paganism, and it will show you that the church steeples did come from sun worship, which was Baal worship. Okay, let's keep going. The passing of several hundred years saw the decline of Hebrew adherents and the rise of a Gentile-dominated religion. Do you hear that? The rise of a Gentile-dominated religion. And so when the Gentiles, who can receive salvation just like the biblical Hebrews, when the Gentiles started coming in, they started bringing their paganism into the religion with them. And that's why they were so accepted. That's why you see all of the relics. You know, when people have angels in their yard, you know, angel, the word angel is a pagan word. And they put angels in their yard. That's an idol. You know, you can't get around that. It's an idol. He says, do not make any graven or carved images. And so we see that people do that, and they stick them in their yard. And when you try to say something to them about it, they get offended because you're talking about their Mary in their yard, or you're talking about their angel sitting in their yard, or you're talking about their Jesus that is in their yard with his hand stretched out. And you know, when you try to be righteous and go before them and tell them, hey, you know, the Most High doesn't agree with that. He speaks against a carved, something made by hands, and people look at it. So let's keep on going. Okay, the passing of several hundred years saw the decline of Hebrew adherents and the rise of a Gentile-dominated religion, very different from the faith of the teaching of the Messiah and the disciples. During the year 325 CE, the Roman Catholic Church was birthed at the Council of Nicaea. The council was convened by the Roman Emperor Constantine, an ardent worshiper of the sun Mithra, who bore the title Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of paganism. Now, this guy is supposed to be the church father. He's the one who legalized Christianity. And he's got the name, the high priest of paganism, Pontifex Maximus. Despite his politically motivated conversion to Christianity, the council was attended by selected church leaders who excluded all Hebrew believers. Do you hear that? Excluded the people that were given the book by the Most High. You can go back and read that in Romans chapter 9. They were given the law. They were given the promise. They were given the worship, everything. Okay? So none of them was invited to it. It was all Gentile who came up with all this. All right? Various doctrinal issues were debated and agreed upon, which resulted in the Nicene Creed. The council was in large part controlled by Eusebius, a bishop with questionable motives and beliefs. Constantine's hand-picked council is responsible for outlawing synagogues and the Torah, or the law, the first 5 books of the Bible. Not a very promising start for a religion that supposedly worshiped a resurrected Hebrew teacher that regularly attended the synagogue where he read and taught the Torah. Basically, he's saying that that's where the Messiah would go and teach every Sabbath. Every Sabbath, he would go into the synagogues and teach the Torah, or the law. Prior to the convening of this council, Constantine had already issued a proclamation on March the 7th, 321 AD, stating, all judges and city people and the craftsmen shall rest upon the venerable day of the sun. So now we see that the first law was made that you could no longer practice the Sabbath, but you had to practice on the venerable day of the sun. So let me give you where this comes from again. This is from the Council of Nicaea, and it was on March the 7th, 321 AD, and it stated, all judges and city people and the craftsmen shall rest upon the venerable day of the sun. So get ready. What has happened in the past is going to come and happen again. I posted up 4 videos on my Facebook page that is going to show you. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything. I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist, but it is going to show you that the Sunday law is going to come back into effect. And this is going to happen because people are turning around and they're starting to go and turn back to the Sabbath. They're starting to ask questions about the Sabbath, questions that they've always had. And now that these people are turning around and turning back to the commandments, the day of the Sabbath that the Most High set, then you're going to start to see the law coming out against those who want to keep the Sabbath. That's just what Satan does. He's a copycatter. So if he can't have his day on the Sabbath, he's going to make his day right next to the day that the Most High picked, and he's going to have his religion worshiping on the day of the sun, Baal worship, which is the day that he made for worship. Okay, the official change from Sabbath to Sunday occurred at the Council of Laodicea, which took place sometime between 343 and 381 CE, Common Era. According to Canon 29, listen, Canon 29 of the Council of Laodicea, Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's day, and if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, that means if any shall be found keeping the seventh day that the Most High commanded us to keep, it says, let them be shut out from Christ. This was a very anti-Semitic or Shemitic gathering, which issued such other proclamations as forbidding fasting with Jews or receiving unleavened bread from Hebrews. Okay, they wanted you to have nothing to do with the Hebrew culture, which the Most High gave them. Wanted to have nothing to do with it. So what did they do? They took the people of Yah and they castigated them out, and they took and made a religion off of it and made people think that this is the true way, when they perverted the true way and they made the religion called Christianity. And as I said, I'm a believer in the Most High. I believe in the Messiah who died upon the tree for us. His blood was shed for the salvation of our salvation and for the forgiveness of our sin. Okay, the transfer from Sabbath to Sunday seemed inevitable due to the ever-increasing pagan influences which poured into the assembly over the centuries and was eventually consummated thanks to Eusebius and his many followers known as Eusebians. We've only got about 3 more pages. We'll be there. Bishop Eusebius in 270 to 338 CE, who worked with Constantine, admits the church's decision to change from Sabbath to Sunday. All things whatsoever that it was duty to do on the Sabbath, these we have transferred to the Lord's day. That was not a commandment from the Most High. That was a commandment from man, and people are doing it today. The Lord's Day, which Christians interpret to be Sunday, has always been a sacred day to the sun god worshippers, thus the name Sunday. Christians hang on one particular verse found in the book of Revelation to justify the honoring of this day. The passage, written by Jonathan or John, reads as follows: I came to be in the Spirit on the day of Yahuwah. Many English Bibles translate the day of Yahuwah as the day or the Lord's day. Okay, there's a difference. This day was called the day of Yahuwah or Yahuwah. It was never called the Lord's Day. So when they changed it in the translation to the Lord's Day, then guess what people thought of? They thought of the day of the sun, Sunday, okay, as the Lord's Day, which has no particular meaning in the context of the scriptures. The day of Yahuwah, on the other hand, is a specific day mentioned within the scriptures at least 30 times and referred to in 300 similar terms. Thus, the day that Jonathan or John was talking about was referring to was the day of Yahuwah, not some vague new day called the Lord's Day. And this passage in no way may be used to support the notion that the Sabbath was changed to Sunday. The first day of each week, Sunday, was consecrated to Mithra. Remember that false deity Mithra, since times remote, because the sun was God, the Lord par excellence. Sunday came to be called the Lord's Day, as later was done by Christianity. So this Lord's Day had already been in existence. So they took it and brought it in and mixed it in with the early believers who actually shunned it. The real true believers wanted to have nothing to do with it. So they castigated them out, and the Gentiles made their own religion, Christianity. I have no dispute with the fact that Sunday is considered to be the Lord's Day, since Baal or Baal means Lord in Hebrew. The fact that Sunday was the traditional day of the week that sun god worshippers revered their Lord. It is quite fitting. This point demonstrates the problem with using titles instead of names in our worship. Sun worshippers are referring to Baal or Baal, Mithra, Ra, Jupiter, Zeus, Helios, Attis, Tammuz, Osiris. See, they're all the same deity. Let me say them all for you again. I don't like saying them. As I said during the Sabbath service, I'm only saying them for teaching purposes. So you will know who the sun deity is. And when they worship on the day of the Lord, which is Sunday, this is who the Lord is. Okay? So, Baal, Mithra, Ra, Egyptology, they call on Ra, Jupiter, Zeus. You see all these mythical people, they ain't real. These are real things that Satan has made. Helios is the sun. Attis, Tammuz, and Osiris, the sun deities. And the like, when they say Lord, while Christians use the same title when referring to their Savior. Both use the same title and worship on the same day, which poses quite a dilemma for Christians, especially when the creator of the universe calls the seventh day Sabbath, set apart. So the seventh day is what is set apart to the Most High, not any other days. The stage has been set for the change from Sabbath to Sunday by two previous edicts issued by Constantine. The first was called the Edict of Milan and was issued in 313 CE. Okay, remember that and go research it. The Edict of Milan, M-I-L-A-N, was issued in 313 CE, Common Era, which adopted a policy of universal religious freedom and ended the persecution of Christians. The second was called the Edict of Constantine and was issued in the year 321 CE. Remember that, the Edict of Constantine, 321 CE, Common Era. This edict legislated the venerable day of the sun, Sunday, to be the rest day. This act was in perfect harmony with Constantine's renowned and continuing involvement in sun god worship. When Constantine created and brought together what is called Christianity, when he started monopolizing it to bring his country back together, he was a Mithra worshiper. He cared nothing about the Most High. He cared nothing about the Hebrew people. He was involved in Mithra worship. In 341 CE at the Council of Antioch, listen, Christians were forbidden from celebrating the Passover, which is one of the appointed times, the Moedim, commanded in the scriptures, and that's in Leviticus chapter 23. Instead, Christians were instructed to celebrate Easter, a day rooted in pagan worship and named after the fertility goddess Easter, also known as Astarte. Thus, the reason for dyed eggs, which were traditionally dipped in the blood of sacrificed infants on the altar of Easter. So we will go around doing all this Easter egg hunting and eating these eggs, and these eggs, we always wonder why they were colored. Well, actually, they were all colored red because they took blood of infant babies and sacrificed them up on the altar, and they would take eggs and dip the eggs in their blood. So that's where the colored eggs come from on Easter, in which we used to do, and some of us do today. Many other pagan traditions were incorporated into the Christian celebration of Easter. Since many early Christians converts grew up in a pagan society and were probably pagans, they likely considered Sunday to be a special day all of their lives. The council's decision to replace the unfamiliar seventh-day Sabbath with the well-known Lord's Day was most likely met with favor. It fit in well with the people's habits and traditions. By observing the first day of the week, which was Sunday, as a Sabbath instead of the seventh day of the week, pagans converts did not have to change their shopping routines or upset their weekly work schedule. They could continue going to the mall, mowing their lawns, and working on their favorite home improvement projects on Saturday, just as they had when they were pagans. The same thing that we have going on today. You see, now, because I cut my grass on Sunday, the church van goes down the street and they look at me as a heathen because I'm not going to church, when in actuality, it's the other way around. I rest on the seventh day and they do their work on the seventh day. And I have to say that they are heathens because they're not obeying the commandments of the Most High. They are following after another, but they don't know that. Okay, so that's why information is so vital. Go back and read and research why we do what we do. One group of believers that would have been manifestly opposed to such a change was the Nazarenes. Okay, remember yesterday, that's what we are actually called, the Nazarenes. Okay, because that's what they called the Messiah, the people of the way were called Netzers. In English, it is called Nazarenes, who by that time were few in number and generally not affiliated with the now mainstream anti-Nomane Gentile dominated church. Okay? Anti-Nomane Gentile denominated Christian church. That's why we have a lot of different denominations going on today. In fact, due to growing anti-Semitic sentiments within the Christian church and the friction that exists between Torah-observant believers and generally lawless Christians, the change was probably welcomed by many Christians because it brought about a long overdue separation from something considered to be, I don't want to use the word Jewish, something considered to be Hebrew. Let's use that. Jewish is, even if the word Jewish, which the ending part of ish means to be like. So when you use the word Jewish, it's saying to be like a Jew. Okay, but that's only one tribe. It's really the tribe of Yehuda or the tribe of Judah. Okay, so that's only one tribe out of 12. And so everybody, when they hear the word Jewish, they think about Israel, but that's only one tribe out of Israel. The sentiment is noticeably expressed in the writings of the early Christian historians such as Epiphanes, who wrote the following. They, open parentheses, the Nazarenes, close parentheses, have no different ideas, but confess everything exactly as the law proclaimed and in the Jewish fashion, except for their belief in Messiah. But since they are still fettering by the law, circumcision, the Sabbath, and the rest, they are not in accord with Christian with Christians. So because they believed in the law and kept the Sabbath and did everything according to the feast days and all that, the Christians said that they were not in accordance to Christians, so they could not be Christians. Even though they believed in Messiah, but because it wasn't done the Christian way, they were not allowed to be with the Christians. Okay? Let's keep going. Notice how he tries to portray the Nazarenes as heretics. But the only accusation that he has against them is that they obey the commandments as opposed to Christians who do not. Sadly, that same attitude exists to this day. Most Catholic and Christian adherents believe that the seventh-day Sabbath is strictly a Jewish, or let's just say this, is strictly a Hebrew observance, so that they regularly profane the Sabbath and then criticize anyone who observes the Sabbath as putting themselves under the law. Shaul or Paul coined this phrase, which, like many of his other writings, has been twisted by dispensationalism thinkers to meet their ends. In this case, the end of the Torah. Obeying the commandments does not put one under the law unless you are relying on that obedience to save your soul. Good point. No one is under the law unless you are relying on the obedience to the law to save you instead of Messiah. You have to have Messiah. You have to have the shed blood of the Messiah, but you also have to have obedience. What good is the shed blood of the Messiah if you ain't going to obey him? You have to have obedience. Remember, obedience is better than sacrifice. Okay, so obeying the commandments does not put one under the law unless you are relying on the obedience to save your soul, which it cannot do. If, on the other hand, you have been saved by grace, then your reasonable service is to love the master with all your heart and with all your soul, Deuteronomy chapter 6 and 5, which will lead to a desire to obey him with all your heart and with all your soul, as Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 16. This is exactly what the Messiah taught his disciples in Matthew 22 and 37. He wants his disciples to love and obey, which brings about a complete obedience on the inside and the outside. He often chastises the Pharisees because they are teaching his people, but they were hypocrites. They taught one thing and they did another. They obeyed on the outside, but their hearts were corrupt. He put it very bluntly when he said, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." And that word wickedness means lawlessness. And that's Matthew 23, verse 27 through 28. He clearly taught that he expected his followers to obey the Torah, as we read in the following teachings. You have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. That's Matthew 5, 27 through 29. He instructed his followers not to commit adultery with their bodies and not to commit adultery in their hearts. That's Exodus chapter 20 and 14, Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 through 28. This is true Torah teaching or law teaching. Again, the Messiah taught, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment." That's Matthew chapter 5, 21 through 22. And again, he instructed people to obey, not just with their bodies, but in their hearts as well. This is the complete obedience that Yahuwah has always desired from his people and is no way abolished the Torah. To the contrary, it is the fulfillment of the Torah as the Messiah said he came to do. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Okay. The Catholic and Christian religious system have rejected the teaching of the Messiah because they have rejected his Torah or his law. They teach against the commandments and proclaim that they are abolished. As a result, they are lawless religions that teach their own rules and traditions rather than the commandments of Yahuwah. The sad part is that most do not realize that this is what they are doing because they have inherited lies, the fathers of their religion. Men like Epiphanius, who criticized the early believers for observing the Sabbath. And you'll find that in Jeremiah chapter 16 and verse 9. Catholic leaders and historians make no bones about the fact that scriptural Sabbath is the seventh day. It was the Catholic Church who altered the Sabbath within their religious system according to one Catholic catechism. Saturday is the Sabbath. We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Sunday or from Saturday to Sunday. James Cardinal Gibbons, a prominent Catholic authority on the subject and a former Archbishop of Baltimore, affirmed this fact by stating, "The Catholic Church, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday." He further states that you may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we never sanctify. On November the 11th, 1895, the office of Cardinal Gibbons, through the Chancellor H.F. Thomas, stated, "Of course, the Catholic Church claims the change was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power." Did you hear that? It is the mark of their ecclesiastical power. There's going to be a mark, and he's already stating that there is a mark. This change is repeatedly referred to as a mark. Sunday is our mark of authority, is what they said. The church is above the Bible, and this transference of the Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. So everyone who now worships on Sunday is a Catholic. Okay, there's no getting around it. You can call yourself a Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Episcopalian. If you worship on Sunday, you are a Catholic. No getting away from it. We've already seen that the Sabbath is a sign or distinguished mark for those who follow Yahuwah. And I'm going to talk about that on the Sabbath. We're going to talk about the Sabbath on the Sabbath. Now we see that the Catholic Church deems Sunday worship as her mark. This should be disconcerting to anyone familiar with the prophet Daniel, who wrote that the anti-Messiah, often referred to as the Antichrist, will speak words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change the times of sacred feasts. We're just about done. Sacred feasts and holy days and the law. That's Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. We're going to read over that again on this Sabbath coming up. This is no doubt that Sunday is a Catholic institution, and it claims to be observance can be defended only on Catholic principles. The Catholic Church used the Sabbath issue as proof that it is the true church because it demonstrates her power to change the commandments of Yahuwah. Had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day of the week, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Okay? Catholics are even baffled by Protestants or Protestants. That's what Baptists, Methodists, Episcopalians all other religions besides the Catholics, that's exactly what they go by. Okay? So Catholics are even baffled by Protestants who allegedly protested against the authority of the Catholic Church, yet continue to follow Catholic dogma over the express commands found within the scriptures. It is well to remind the Presbyterians, the Baptists, the Methodists, and all the other Christians that the Bible does not support them anywhere in their observance of Sunday. Sunday is an institution of the Roman Catholic Church, and those who observe the day observe a commandment of the Catholic Church. So if you meet on Sunday and you do your worshiping on Sunday, Sunday was actually made the Sabbath day for the Christian church, which there is no validity to in the Bible. That was done by the Catholic Church, and they admit it. So 3 more paragraphs and we are done. So Protestants who accepted the Bible as the only rule of faith and religion should by all means go back to the observance of the Sabbath. The fact that they do not, but on the contrary observe the Sunday, stifles them in the eyes of every thinking man. We Catholics do not accept the Bible as the only rule of faith. Besides the Bible, we have the living church, the authority of the church as a rule to guide us. We say this church, these are Catholics, this church instituted by Christ to teach and guide man through life has the right to change ceremonial laws of the Old Testament, and hence we accept her change of the Sabbath to Sunday. It is always somewhat laughable to see the Protestant churches, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran. He says it is laughable to see the Protestant churches in pulpit legislation demand the observance of Sunday, of which there is nothing in the Bible. The Catholics are very clear on this issue. If you follow the Bible alone, there can be no question that you are obligated or obliged to keep Saturday, the 7th day, holy, since that is the day especially prescribed by Almighty Yah to be kept holy to the Master. Catholics acknowledge that the scriptures command a 7th day Sabbath, and only if you believe that the Catholic Church has the power to change the scriptures should you recognize the observance of Sunday, the Lord's Day. Okay, so there we have it by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church says to you who meet on Sundays that if you do meet on Sunday, that you are a Catholic. If you are a Protestant church, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Church of God, Episcopalian, Assemblies of God, you name it. If you meet on Sundays, the Catholics say, and the Pope says that you are a Catholic, because only Catholics meet on Sunday, because there was never a law given by the Most High for you to meet on Sundays. The Catholic Church said it has the power to change the Sabbath day from the 7th day of the week to the 1st day of the week. And so if you meet on Sunday and honor the 1st day of the week, the day of the sun, you are a Catholic. There's no way around it. And even the Catholic Church tells you. So what I just read was chapter 11 from the book called Walk in the Light, the Sabbath. Scriptural truth concerning the Sabbath and Christian Sunday observance. So that's what I just read in it. And if you all have any questions, you can get in contact with me. Please message me. I'm going to save this up on Facebook, and I'm going to save this to both of my YouTube pages if you want to go back and maybe record it and hear the whole chapter. If you want to hear it on YouTube, you can either go to House of Israel Assembly, Madisonville, Kentucky. You will find it on there, or you can go to Yoshaya Israel Edward Logan. Okay, so you can go back and hear the whole chapter and dissect it for yourself. For many of you who all have the premium, you can actually download this to your phone and you can listen to it going to work. Everything that I just read just came from this book, and yeah, I added my little 2 cents in it, but it's on there. So just be sure and go back and listen to it and go over it and go over it. All the information that I gave you, go back and read it for yourself, okay? Let no man tell you anything, but let the Most High tell you everything. So I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope you got a lot of good information from this to help you to start making your decisions as to whether you're going to follow the Christian church or whether you're going to follow the Bible. Okay, it's the Bible. All right, so we're going to be talking more on the Sabbath. We do have a Sabbath service that starts at 1:30, and we have it live on my Facebook page, and we also have it YouTube live as well on the House of Israel Assembly, Madisonville, Kentucky. So you can be able to see it on there as well. So hope you all enjoyed this. For some of you, I know it might make your knees shake because you've always believed what you've always believed, and we've believed our tradition from our parents and our grandparents. But now it's time for us to decide whether we're going to believe in what the Most High Yah says or whether we're going to believe what religion and people say. So I hope you all enjoyed this. And I'm getting ready to sign off, and you all take care. Shalom.